So when we called in for air support, they advised that they weren't flying in the area at that time. It wasn't quite dark yet. So if I would have had to wait, I wouldn't have made it. There was no way. So, I mean, when I heard that come over the radio, I was like, well, it's been nice knowing you guys.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Scuttlebutt. This is a special episode of The Scuttlebutt, and sort of keeping with our theme of each season having some bonus tracks tacked on to the end of each season. We're going to do 2 actual bonus episodes here for season 4. And if you've been a long-time watcher or subscriber to the Scuttlebutt, then you've heard me talk about the Veterans Breakfast Club, whose mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. And recently, the VBC held a 24-hour Zoom marathon on Veterans Day. We called it Vet-A-Thon. Well, for this bonus episode for season 4, we decided to take bits and pieces of that 24 hours on Zoom and break it all down into some highlights for you, our Scuttlebutt viewers. We will have several veterans telling stories during this episode, including Mike CHEROCK, who's actually the president of the board of the VBC, Chris Hutchins, Robbie Stock, James Brundage, Mitty Smith, and you guys may know this name if you are a listener of the Scuttlebutt, co-star Ryan All. He did an hour and he interviewed a couple of his buddies, Eric and Jake. All of these veterans told incredible stories over the course of those 24 hours. And if you didn't get a chance to join us during that, we're going to be doing it again next year, and maybe a couple other smatterings of special events that are going to happen. Make sure that you always tune into the VBC on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are always on Zoom, always talking military headlines and topics. And we always have a great group of veterans that come in and like to share stories. And that's really what the mission of the VBC is. And that's why we're adding this bonus episode on to the end of season 4. I want to thank you for being a part of the Scuttlebutt, for tuning in, for listening, for downloading, leaving us comments and reviews. We have a lot coming up in season 5 that we're super excited about and to get to. I really hope that you all enjoy these highlights of Vet-A-Thon. And if you're interested in hearing more about Vet-A-Thon, visit us on the website, veteransbreakfastclub.org. On there, you can sign up for our e-blast, which happen every Monday and include great blog posts about military topics and military history. You can sign up for the VBC magazine, which is incredible. We're going to show a graphic here on screen of what the VBC magazine looks like. We will send it to you for free. It's an incredible magazine. You can sign up for our membership. There's a lot to do on our website. Again, veteransbreakfastclub.org. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you are the first to know whenever a new episode of Scuttlebutt comes out. Thank you again for being such an incredible audience. And without further ado, here's the bonus track for season 4, highlights from Vet-A-Thon.
Hutch started off in the Marines and then went on to the Army and was part of Ranger Regiment for most of that. I know one time you told me that those lands over there are like home. You know, you knew the streets, you without GPS kind of stuff. Yeah. And, you know, saw a lot of different things. And I know that one of the fascinating stories that I hope we get to this morning is that you were in Iraq with your mom. And I know some of the fellows who make, you know, kind of poke at you as you'd have dinner with your mom and then your mom would go do what she did. And maybe you can note, you know, that story. So, but why don't we start off first is, you know, why'd you join the military, Hutch, and what led you to a career in the service?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Well, my father was a Foreign Service officer when I was a child, and I don't think anybody at AE Works even knows the story. But so I lived, you know, a majority of my young life overseas around the Marine barracks there because they all guarded the embassies and stuff. So my whole life, I kind of had a you know, fantasy about being a Marine, being a soldier, and listening to their stories and stuff. And I wanted to do the same thing. I'd see them go out on the runs every morning, and you know, their platoon leader, their platoon sergeant would have this big chew in his mouth, and he'd spit all the time and talk and cuss. And you know, for a little kid, man, I mean, that was everything I wanted to be when I got older. You know, they look great and they're dressed blue, so on and so forth. So, I mean, the majority of my childhood, I knew in one way or another I was going to be a soldier or a Marine. How I got there later on in life, you know, when I became a teenager was totally different, because I kind of turned into a bad kid, had my troubles and issues in school, and In fact, the morning I was going into the Marine Corps, I was standing in court with my mother and the recruiter sitting behind me. It wasn't anything big. I was, a curfew violation a few weeks before that, but we ran from the cops, and it just became a big ordeal. Next thing you know, turns out the same morning I'm joining the Marine Corps, I'm standing in court, and the judge says, of course, well, there's nothing that I can do to you that the Marine Corps won't. So good luck, kid. And we go out in the hallway. And I was listening to Tom O'Hare, his mom said, who's going to wash your clothes and everything now? And my mom said, he's your problem now. So that was the last time I saw my mother until November 27th, when I graduated boot camp. I spent the better part of 6 years in the Marines. I joined in 1989. I got out of active service in 1993 because of the cutbacks. When Clinton came in office.
Yeah, he shrunk it down.
Yeah, I didn't want to get out of the Marine Corps. I ended up liking the military as much as I hated it. I loved it. And anybody who's been in the military knows, man, every enlistment, I swear I'm getting out. I'm not staying in this place, because there are times in life you have no decision. You have no choice but to do what they say, or, you get in trouble some way, somehow. So, I stayed in the Marine Corps, and somebody told me to go into reserves and then join the Marine Corps after. Well, while I was in the reserves, my cousin was talking to a recruiter at the time, and he started talking about Rangers. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to read books about Rangers. And I remember this picture, this guy sitting on the airfield, and I believe it's Fort Benning, Georgia, where I ultimately retired. But, he's sitting in his OD greens, and he's got this big rucksack between his leg. He's got this parachute on his back. He's just loaded down, this is before the Grenada invasion and stuff, I mean, he had the high-end tight blonde hair, he's just a stud, and I said, I want to do that. And the Army recruiter said, you can. And I said, well, okay, I'm joining the Army now. So I ran off and joined the Army. My mom didn't say to the Army that they're your problem now, but in fact, at the time, let me back up a little bit. Since I didn't want to get out of the Marine Corps, I started going to the Navy, and I'd worked with the Navy and the Marine Corps on ship and everything, and the SEALs and stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a SEAL. And I had a buds date and everything, but I couldn't balance that ball on my nose. So I didn't get into the SEALs.
I remember I asked you one time, why didn't you join the Navy? And you went, it's the Navy. I wanted, when I went into the Marine Corps, I talked to the recruiter. I didn't want anything to do with the desk. Of course, any 17-year-old kid, I didn't want anything to do with the desk. I didn't know what the infantry was called. I just wanted to carry a gun and get out there and fight people and stuff. And that's what I ultimately ended up doing in the Marines. I was an 11 Bravo. I was a scout swimmer. That's what I did for the last 2 years of the Marines. I loved being a scout swimmer. I love going out to the beach every day and doing over the horizon swims and everything else, swimming at night, swimming into Tunisia. I love that stuff.
Hey, I need to interrupt you here. I've never heard of a scout swimmer. What is that? Can you describe that role?
Scout swimmer is part of reconnaissance. We were part of a battalion landing team. You do your train up before you go on ship. Well, we had scout swimmers. I was also a salt climber, just did climbs up cliffs to bring the team up over the rock faces and everything else. But scout swimmer, you swim out from over the horizon, wherever they drop you off, you swim in. You do the surf zone reconnaissance, any obstacles in the surf zone, think about D-Day and all that. Any obstacles up on the beach, and you recon all the way up to the hinterland. And you can get as technical as, doing the wave sets, doing soil samples to see if they'll support the landing craft, so on and so forth. So it's
is that fascinating?
Yeah, you get up there and you're in your wetsuit, and you roll around sugar cookie, and you look like a big sand starfish out there running around with a rifle, and you're doing your reconnaissance then.
And over the horizon, that's at least 3 miles. So you're swimming 3 miles into the beach, collecting sand samples, looking for mines, looking for obstacles. And then are you reporting by radio back?
Yeah, I actually carried the radio in the water.
You carried the radio in the water.
I drug it behind me on my leash. So
Are you giving me the business, or are you telling the truth?
No, it's a Prick 77. with crypto gear in it, it was a heavy ass radio.
Okay,
So.
yeah, I'm very gullible, so sometimes I wonder if I'm being so. Okay, so I mean, I would imagine that. Well, that's a difficult job. So, okay, I don't want to interrupt you too much, but that's a fascinating thing I want to look into.
That's great. I was always in shape. I swam every day for PT. I mean, I was like an Olympic swimmer almost.
Right.
But anyways, fast forward, get out of the Marines, and I joined the Army. And it's funny you bring up Air Assault School, Bob. I was the honor graduate at the Sobolewski Air Assault School at the 101st back in 1996. I was actually just going for the road march winner. That's all I wanted to do was beat everybody physically, but I ended up being an honor grad. So
that's incredible.
I didn't even expect that one. I didn't even know I was doing good at that school. I joined the Army. I went to the 101st. And coming from the Marine Corps to the Army, you'd think it'd be an easy transition, but the terminology and everything is, completely different. I was still talking Navy and they're talking Army, latrines, stuff like that. I have no idea, but they didn't send me through basic training or anything like that. They just put me in the Army.
So you after 9/11, you saw the transition like we were talking about earlier. And then when did you first deploy to go over and take it to them?
Well, it's funny. I did not deploy early, but after 2002, I was in either Iraq or Afghanistan every year of the war up until 2012. So we would
every year.
Yeah. We would spend, so the rotation started out, I spent, you'd go over for 90 days, but as soon as we got there, the larger Army and everybody else who kind of saw our rotations and stuff thought we were getting over in life, but no, man, it was terrible when we got there, but soon it became home.
Real quick, if you would, because I think it's fascinating, and for everybody's, this is a fascinating, a lot of fascinating aspects to your story, Hutch. This one I find just incredible, and I was telling Todd about it, and he's never heard this. So talk about having dinner with your mom under the tent, and then going out at night on an operation with your mom.
Yeah. So, okay. My mom didn't go out on the operations with me, but she did when she had a special forces. She went out with the Green Berets,
Okay.
And she did like the female engagement stuff. So we were in Afghanistan. First, she was with me in Kandahar. And then the next deployment, she was with me in Mazar-e-Sharif.
Incredible. So your mom was with the FBI at the time. Who was she with?
No, she was with the DIA.
DIA. Okay,
Yeah.
she's with DIA.
Yeah.
So she gets sent over, and you just happen to be there at the same time. I'm sure that's just coincidence.
Well, yeah, she knew what my rotations were, and it was just a coincidence. She ended up in the same spots as me. Yeah, totally a coincidence. And luckily, I had battlefield commanders around enough that would take care of me, let me go see my mom and everything. But when we were in Mez, up in Mazar-e-Sharif, every night we had dinner, and look, I look older than my mother. So, some of the guys who didn't know it was my mother thought first sergeant had a girlfriend, so, no, my mom also did, she also put the package together after our post-mission stuff. She saw everything that happened out there. She wasn't a fan of that. She wasn't a fan of that at all. But
Wow.
it was a necessary evil, and she gained a better understanding of everything that happened out there. And that's what I think that's what her whole search was to see what I go through, what I talk about, how it really was. My mom is the bravest person I ever met in my life, and I'd get on the phone with her and she'd say, I'm going out with these guys. I'll be gone for a couple of days. And I said, no. She said, don't worry, I'm with the Green Berets. I said, Mom, they're Green Berets. Come on, man. If you come out with Rangers, you're safe. You go out with Green Berets, you never know what's going to happen. So,
That's just great.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you very much, Mike, for letting me speak. I really enjoy the Veterans Breakfast Club and listen to the stories and stuff. But you know, you start out because of the patriotism, because America was attacked and everything, and you lose somebody, and then it becomes about them. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Hutch. Robbie, there we are. Now I gotta say, Robbie's the best looking SEAL you've ever met. My man has, I mean, dude, you got to give me tips.
Some things can't be taught, bro.
If you could, Robbie, you know, I know that, you know, you went in, your fellow Penn Stater like myself, and then you joined the service. And I know that, you know, you had a choice, as you told me, and certainly for everybody listening here, you explain this, it's your story, that you had an option between being an officer or enlisted. You wanted to be a SEAL, and you knew that if you went enlisted, if you got through BUD/S, you would definitely be assigned to a team. Where an officer's, and I hope I say this correctly, an officer is not necessarily guaranteed. So even though you had an option to go into the O ranks, you chose to go enlisted. Did I say that accurately?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty close. So when I graduated college, 9/11 obviously happened when I was in school. So I finished my degree. And then when I got out, I wanted to do some type of military service. I mean, the only reason that I picked the SEAL teams, to be quite honest, is because that had the fastest pathway to get into an operational unit. If you made it through all the training, you could get to a deployable unit the fastest. So initially, because I had a degree, I went to OCS Recruiting Depot, and to the recruiter's credit, you know, you hear tons of horror stories about these guys. You know, I told them what I wanted to do, and they said, listen, like, if this is something that you want to do, like, you probably should think about enlisted versus going to officer. You know, at the time, the bulk of the billets went to academy grads, then ROTC, then, you know, a mere few would trickle down to an OCS candidate. Guy like myself, who didn't really know anybody, who grew up in Burgerstown, Pennsylvania, like, I probably wasn't going to get a slot. So that's what I did. I left there. I went straight to the enlisted side. Enlisted that day, was in the delayed entry program for a few months, and then, you know, went to boot camp. From boot camp, I went straight out to Coronado, started was class 263, finished with class 263, straight into SEAL qualification training, finished that, and then straight to a team.
Now, you were motivated, if I remember correctly, you were motivated. I mean, you were at Penn State at main campus when 9/11 happened. Do you come from a military family, man?
No. No, I mean, both my grandfathers were in World War II, but I mean, I grew up in Burgerstown, Pennsylvania, which is a rural area, you know, as most of everybody on here knows, you know, 45 minutes, 50 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. I didn't grow up with much. My family didn't have much money growing up. Yeah, I lost my dad pretty young, so it was tough on my mom, but you know, again, I didn't really have much military exposure. So again, you know, 9/11 was impactful for me because I felt like I needed to do my part. And I felt like, you know, being that I wanted to do my part, I wanted to do it my way because it's just kind of how I am. So, you know, again, that's why I chose the SEAL teams, because I wanted to be, you know, somewhat of a deployable, you know, forward operating force. Picked the SEAL teams only because it was the fastest pathway to get downrange to an operational unit. And I don't like cutting, shaving.
Say again?
I said, and I don't like cutting my hair or shaving. So I wouldn't have done it in the Marine Corps or anywhere else.
Right. So I know you deployed a number of times, and then and there's a lot in between there, man. And that, you know, and there's things that you know, maybe for a different setting. But I know that in October 2010, this is a story that's been written about quite a bit. You know, in October 2010, you were injured, and yep. You mind sharing that story, because the recovery is is miraculous, is I think the way to describe it. So if you wouldn't mind, Robbie, could you talk about what was going on in October 2010, man?
Yeah, so I was in Afghanistan. We were in the Kunar Valley. I was at a small CIA outstation as a team lead, sniper and recce to help support some agency work that was going on up there. In October 4th, 2010, I had a grenade go off in front of me. It injured my left arm pretty badly. It took a pretty big chunk out of it. The overpressure and frag broke a bunch of bones in my face, as well as, shrapnel all through my neck and, upper body where I didn't have body armor on. I was pretty fortunate there. So when we called in for air support to get me out of there, they advised that they weren't flying in the area at that time. And it wasn't quite dark yet. So if I would have had to wait, I wouldn't have made it. There was no way. So, I mean, when I heard that come over the radio, I was like, well, it's been nice knowing you guys. I'm going to check out here. But one of the agency guys actually, we grabbed a vehicle, and there was a surgical capable fob that was about 10K of where we were at. So they loaded me up in there, got me to the fob, immediately, sort of went at it. And then from there, I don't really remember much. I mean, they knocked me out and they were able to get me stabilized there. By that time, darkness had fell. They were able to get medevac in, picked me up on a helo, got me out of the fob, flew me to Bagram. When I got to Bagram, there just so happened to be a hand surgeon and a vascular surgeon on staff that night. So that was beneficial for a lot of reasons, given the severity of my arm. I don't know if most people know. If they don't know, I mean, you kind of get what you get when you're in them places. I mean, there could have been a podiatrist or some other random surgeon on staff that night. And, be it as it was, I was very fortunate to have the doctors that I had. So they got, the initial reconstruction surgery. They didn't remove my arm, obviously, at that time. They knew that there was a ton of damage. Within a few hours, they airlifted me out of there up to Germany, where I stayed for about a week and had several more surgeries on my left arm and face to remove a bunch of broken teeth and repair some bones that were fractured in my jaw. And then from there, I flew back to the States and was in Walter Reed for about 2.5 months, where I had 20 some more surgeries. Throughout that stay at Walter Reed, the surgeons there were fairly convinced that I needed to remove my arm. And luckily for me, I was a part of a unit that let me make that decision. So I didn't wake up one morning after a surgery and not have my left arm anymore. And Walter Reed got to a spot where they were like, hey, listen, like, there's nothing more we could do. We don't think the arm's ever going to work again. You got a ton of nerve damage. You got a ton of vascular damage. This is our guidance. So the command let me find a civilian doctor for a second opinion, that of which I did. I flew out immediately right at Christmas time to go get some second opinions, and they sort of painted a different picture. They thought I had some hope, and basically here I am today. I mean, I still got my arm. I mean, I have some deficits in my hand because I had major nerve damage. But if you just see me walking around or even working out today, like, I don't think you would ever know that I was the degree I was. And it's really a testament to the good doctors and people who took care of me along the way, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, on the surgery side, was over 30 surgeries, reconstructive surgeries, correct?
Yeah, I've had others since then. Like, I had my wrist fused a few years ago, some other random stuff, but in total, it's almost 40 on my left arm and face.
I'm sharing a photo that Robbie sent me. That who can you see this photo, Robbie? I know you're on your phone. Who are these folks?
So the lady on the left is my mom. That was at Walter Reed. The next one over is Michelle Obama.
She looks familiar.
Yeah, myself in the middle, and then 2 other guys that were just up visiting me. They were part of the team in the hospital that day.
And this is at Walter Reed.
Yeah.
And so this would have been around in the 2010, 2011 timeframe. Now I know, like, some of the stories that have been written about you in terms of that recovery, you developed explain a little bit about because the recovery was so intense. You've told me about in terms of your regimen. to build strength back into your arm. And Robbie, I have a photo of Robbie, and I don't think we want to show it here. Although if you saw it, and then, and maybe Todd, that'll be up to you, but it is amazing as to what Robbie was able to recover from is short. I mean, I'm not even doing it justice. But the development of that, man, right? The process for which you did led to, there's some stories on that. Can you tell us a little bit about that regimen and how, I mean, it's just intense.
Yeah. I mean, once I got to the point where the reconstruction surgeries were sort of finished and they couldn't really do any more with that, I started with, again, I was very fortunate. The command cut me away to work with some civilian hand and arm specialists and athletic trainers, strength conditioning coaches, et cetera. So again, this picture here was probably somewhere in early December. No movement in my hand, no motor function, no nothing. I started working with the therapists and all the follow-on recovery stuff probably late January. And the command cut me away, and I actually went out to Tucson, Arizona to work with some specialists. And I worked with them for about 5 months, and it was pretty much my job every day, all day. And I got to a point where I started getting some function back in my hand. My median nerve was the most damaged, and that controls like your thumb and forefinger. And I still don't have great function in them, but my ulnar nerve came back around, and then my radial nerve came back around a little bit too. But, so just to give like a timeline of comparison. So that picture was in December of 2010, no function, no movement in my arm whatsoever. In May or early June of 2011, when I came back to Virginia Beach, I started doing house runs with the team again, hostage scenarios. Again, I worked every day, all day. I don't really drink, but I didn't drink. I ate good. I did everything that, they told me to do. And, I made a pretty decent recovery. Unfortunately, I never could get cleared fully because I don't have much feeling in my hand. But I had full intention of going back and doing what I was doing before.
You were medically retired, correct, in 2013?
Yeah. I mean, we finally got to a point where like they just weren't going to clear me. I could have stayed in more on administrative side if I wanted to, but that's never what I wanted to do. And to be fair as well, I never really wanted to be a lifelong career guy. I mean, I came in to do a specific thing. And that, I felt like I did it. I was very fortunate. Even knowing the outcome, I would still do it again. I have no regrets. I always say that I got more out of it than I gave. I wish I could there more for the guys that didn't make it, but that is what it is. So,
and you've taken the training, then the discipline and everything, you just talked about in your military career. And I know you've been very successful in business. You had a company that you created down at Virginia Beach that, you end up selling, and you moved back home here to Pittsburgh with your wife and children.
Yep.
And and in these days, I can see you're in the office. It looks like you're at the Oxford Center downtown. Is that right? Is that right?
You're good. Are good.
So,
so my company that I started right after I got out. It was engineering related, which is my background. We did manufacturing. I sold it to a private equity company in 2017. We moved back to Pittsburgh, where me and my wife are both from, with my daughters. I worked for a private equity group out of New York for a little while, and then last summer. Not 21, but 2020, I left Blackstone and I came to Tri-State Capital here in Pittsburgh. So it's been a good ride. I mean, my path in life isn't typical. People who know like all the random shit that I've done, for lack of a better phrase, it's pretty random. From engineering major to military, enlisted side, back to engineering, back to finance, private equity. It's just weird. I don't think you could chart it that way.
No, man, but you're a great American, Robbie, and I could not be more honored to have you on here this morning and to share your story.
James, you are the curator over at the Pritzker. You have a really incredible resume, and I thought we'd start a bit with your service before we get into what's going on at the Pritzker, which is a lot. So we want to make sure we have time for that. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
You're not hungover from Marine Corps birthday party?
No.
Okay.
I was going to say, to your earlier point, I don't think you can ever have too many Marines. You know, as many more that would like to, I would say, encourage you to have them on.
And James, you enlisted in 2003.
Yes. Yeah. So my personal service is I enlisted after high school. I'm from Connecticut originally. Enlisted in the Marine Corps. Did my training down at Parris Island and then Camp Lejeune. I was an infantryman by trade, and then I did a few deployments to Iraq and Okinawa. So got to travel around quite a bit, see a bunch of the country and the world, and yeah, so it was maybe not the best time to join the military, but
I was going to say that was right after the invasion, and so did you you knew you were going to be going when you enlisted?
Yeah, so I actually signed up in the fall of 2002. I think my parents were a little bit cautious of me doing that, but they ultimately sort of recognized that this was what I wanted to do, and at the time I wasn't really sure. College didn't really sort of fit into my plans. I didn't know what my plans were. And so I decided to enlist. A few of my older brother's friends had joined the Marines in 2001. So I kind of had seen them. And so it seemed like, what I was kind of looking for at that time. That it certainly seemed like the sort of direction I was heading in. And so I went to boot camp in the summer of 2003 after the invasion already happened. Yeah.
So you don't come from a military family?
No. My grandfather served in the 8th Air Force in World War II. I had an uncle who served during the Vietnam era in the Air Force, and that's pretty much it. And then just myself.
And can I ask what your first deployment was like in 2004?
Yeah. So my first deployment, I ended up with 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines out of Camp Pendleton. I got there in early January 2004, and by mid-February I was deployed, and I ended up serving my first deployment in Ramadi, which is capital of Anbar province in Iraq, and that was from March till September 2004. That was the way we had trained for it, and the mission was intended to be security and support operations. I think, that was the intent. That isn't quite what happened. So it was, I would say it was a bit of a rough deployment. My battalion lost 36 Marines. So it was a pretty difficult deployment fairly early on. I think we were all kind of, from my perspective, unsure about, what it was we were doing there. I was 18 when I deployed. I had my 19th birthday in Iraq. So, I think that played into it as well, that, I was still fairly young and not quite sure what I was doing there, I guess.
How do you think your first deployment changed you?
Well, it definitely taught me a lot of lessons. I feel like it matured me well beyond my years at that point in time. Exposed me to a lot of various aspects of the world, and certainly the time in Iraq was difficult at times, better at others, but I think it overall it kind of matured me, gave me a sense of kind of better understanding of the world. But by the time I, redeployed home, I was, at that point, I'd still only been in the Marine Corps for about 1 year and 3 months. So I still had almost 3 years on my contract.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But between your two deployments, you actually shipped out to Okinawa and spent some time there.
Yeah, well, the Marine Corps still likes to do their amphibious operations. They still train in amphibious operations. And so when we came back to the US, we started a workup cycle to deploy to Okinawa. as a traditional sort of battalion, and my company was a boat company, so we were we led amphibious raids on Zodiacs, and so we did several months of training, pre-deployment training for boat insertions. I was a coxswain, so I trained to be a boat driver. And so we went to Okinawa. We were there for about 8 months in 2005, and deployed to the Philippines from there with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. And so we trained with the Filipino forces. That was really my first kind of interaction, training with foreign nations military. And that was a lot of fun, certainly much less danger than my first deployment. And we did a lot of jungle warfare training in Okinawa as well. So
I have two quick questions about Okinawa. One being, like, your first deployment is in ROBBIE, and you go for amphibious training. Were you a little bit like, what are we doing here in the ocean?
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things where we kind of, initially were like, why are we training, for amphibious operations when, we're primarily fighting, urban warfare, in these cities in Iraq. And it certainly, we were kind of a little bit, questioning of it, but ultimately we weren't going to complain too much because, we got to relax. After our first deployment, we were in Okinawa, and, we were doing training in the water where it's, the water's 75, 80 degrees, sitting on the beaches, waiting to do things. So, it wasn't the worst thing to be doing when we knew that, the other battalions were deploying back to Iraq or to Afghanistan. So it was a little bit of a break. I think certainly after that first deployment in our experience in Iraq, a lot of the younger guys who hadn't deployed with us, I think they were more eager to go overseas, to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. But I was more than content to enjoy Okinawa for a little while.
And my second question about Okinawa kind of ties into what your current role is with the Pritzker. Is you have a sort of passion for storytelling, passion for history. You're in Okinawa as a Marine. There's, some fairly large history associated with that battle. Did you take that in while you were deployed there?
Yeah, so we, you can't really go anywhere in Okinawa without seeing some vestige of the battle, from 1945. And I don't think I really kind of recognized it at the time, but I was there for what turned out to be the 60th anniversary of the battle in 2005. There were a couple of times where we did have speakers, veterans of the battle, come and talk to us about what their experience had been like. We visited a number of the sites as essentially like official, company outings, where we would go and see and get tours of particular areas of the battlefield. We were given the opportunity to go through some of the Japanese tunnels that are still very much, accessible on the island. And pretty much, anywhere you went, you could see memorials, whether they were in Japanese, some were in American, but a lot were in Japanese. And so it was never very far from anywhere we were. There were a few museums we visited, and we went to the big memorial down in Naha, which is to both the Japanese and Okinawans who perished during the battle, as well as the American forces there. So it was something that we were very conscious of, and that, I would say, the leadership did a good job of making sure that we were able to experience some of that while we were there.
That's great. And when did you get out?
So I got out in 2007. After Okinawa, went back, and we reverted right back to line companies and training for another deployment to Iraq. So I deployed with the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit for that deployment. And so we ended up going to Iraq as a part of the surge in late 2006. So it was right around Thanksgiving that we went to Iraq. And I ended up right back in Ramadi, where I had been in 2004. So, it was an interesting, situation, and kind of surreal to see the change that had happened in the city in, the 2 years since I had left, not for the better, as you can probably imagine. And so that was a different experience. We were there as a part of that surge, the increase in troops. And so it was very much that deployment was far more sort of, aggressive in nature as far as the kind of work we were doing, searching out weapons caches, and we had much more dealings with the various anti-Al-Qaeda and anti-uprising forces. So we did work a lot more with local Iraqi militias and groups like that in the area. But yeah, that deployment was interesting, just because I deployed back to the same place. And then we left in April from Iraq. Unfortunately, because we'd gone over on the MEU, they stuck us back on the ships, and we sailed back to California.
And we actually talked about the MEU, I think in like the 1 a.m. hour, but could you remind us what the MEU is?
Marine Expeditionary Unit, from my enlisted Marine perspective, was we deployed on ships, usually 3 ships I think there were. I was on the Dubuque, USS Dubuque, which was a LHD, I believe. And so the Navy put us up in their holds, and we sailed around with them, and we would do some stops where we do training exercises. And then, ultimately we disembarked in Kuwait, went into Iraq. And then when we got back on the ships, it was more of just kind of a haul back to California, though they were nice enough to let us stop in Australia for about 6 days. And so that was a fun time. But yeah, ultimately doing some training. We didn't, from my perspective, we didn't do a ton. We didn't have a lot of interaction with the Navy, as far as training or otherwise, but they were gracious hosts to us. Let's see, there I am in Iraq in 2004. So I'm 18 in that picture on the left there.
Boy, you're mad dogging in that picture.
Yeah.
Did they give you an extra high hat? That looks extra high to me.
No, I think it was just a small one, to be quite honest. Yeah. And there I am, old Baldy, in the right picture there. I don't know why I thought shaving my head would be a good idea. It wasn't a bad idea. So that's 2004, and then here I am in early 2007.
Oh
wow.
So just a little tired there. I think that's a post patrol photograph of me.
Post patrol.
Yeah.
Boy, that picture says a lot.
It really does. The eyes.
And James, the eyes. And I mean, just not to, I don't want to interrupt you, and I'm sorry, but
no.
Now I understand why you understood Bill Mauldin's World War II cartoon so well. You look like a Willie or a Joe right there.
Yeah. No, I think, when I was creating the exhibit, I was drawing upon my own experiences to kind of think about, what were the kind of things that I would have been able to relate to, through his cartoons, that I would have looked at and said, that's perfect. He hit it exactly how it was. And so, I was able to, I think, have a little bit maybe more insight than someone who hadn't served, just to understand, especially his military cartoons and what he was trying to get out of those. But, everybody's service is different. And while, war in many ways is very similar, and certainly the experiences are very similar, I'm sure Willie and Joe would have been just as, amazed by what I was doing as I probably would have been about what they were doing. So.
Well, I've been really honored to share my hosting hour with you, James. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that you guys have success in the rest of your Veterans Day, and happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Dr. Smith, how are you?
I'm doing great today. Thank you, Bart, for asking, and happy Veterans Day to you and all our other veterans on the line today.
All right, happy Veterans Day to you. Well, I mean, Marvin teed you up perfectly here. I almost feel like I should just jump straight into that instead of some questions, but I'll start with the same question of what this day means to you. Could you share that with us?
Oh, well, I'm going to try my best not to get too emotional like my buddy and my number one.
It's fine. Yeah.
But Veterans Day, it means a lot, and it says a lot. But the main things that sticks out most to me is, and I think Marvin alluded to that, is freedom is costly. It reminds us of the different types of things that our veterans do day in and day out, and the many sacrifices that they make. And we're only talking about 1%. Can you imagine? Only 1% of our nation. So, and another thing that it reminds me of is service. Because when you're talking about veterans, you're talking about people who have left their homes, some of them 17, 18 years old, have walked away from their family and their loved ones to go and walk and serve into the unknown. So when I see that flag and when I hear the word veterans, it's just an overwhelming feeling knowing that many, 1% of our nation was willing to lay down their life for their brothers and sisters.
That's very well said. You touched me. You guys are starting this whole emotional thing now. I didn't bring you on here for that. But you guys are striking all the chords. I'm like, wait a minute. I was 2 months. I joined the military 2 months, turning 18. So not quite 17, but I remember that, and it was just me who made this decision to do it. So when you say leave your families and leave all those things behind and go on this journey, that hit me. So tell us what made you join. Why the military for you?
Oh, short but long story. I come from a large family, small hometown in Alabama, but I was the 8th child. My dad was a World War II vet, but I actually had a scholarship to go to Tuskegee Institute at that time, Tuskegee University. But I saw all the work that my father was doing to help my other siblings and brothers, and I said, and the recruiter approached me. And I said, this is an opportunity for me to not only relieve the pressure from my father, but also give me an opportunity to serve, as well as, since I had an opportunity to get my education through Tuskegee Institute, I said, well, the military, the Army is also another opportunity for me to still not only make my own way, but also get the education that I know that my parents would have wanted me to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, I share the sentiment that although it was not this driving force of education, I had the same thought that, okay, I'm gonna get this degree. When I joined, I made that dedication and that promise to myself. It was a long journey, but I made it happen. So I think we teed this up perfectly to dive into your expertise. And so tell us about your company, and then you can make the segue straight into how important you feel education is for our veterans and transition military.
Okay, all right. Like you said, I'm a consultant. When I first of all, let me back up a little bit and say prior to retiring and prior to getting out of the military, one of the few things that I had said before I retired is I wanted to make sure upon that transition, I wanted to ensure that I was marketable. And marketable meaning have whatever you need or whatever you equip yourself. However, I knew on my transition out of the military, I know one, as I kind of stress, and I stress to Marvin as well as a lot of other soldiers also, there is life after the Army. So what are you going to do? And I challenged myself that also. For one of the questions I asked, are you marketable? And if I'm not marketable, what are things that I need to do to equip myself to be successful once I transition out of the military? So I went after it, meaning I went to work. Not only do I gave my all to the military, but also I need to prepare myself for myself and equip myself with the tools that I needed to do. So education is key to that. And I think most people that know me know that I am an advocate for education. And the reason I am an advocate for education, one is it starts with my father, who was a World War II vet also, who was an advocate for education. He believed that this is our key to success. And oftentimes when I mention the word education, that doesn't mean always degrees. Of course, educational degrees are fine, but now out here in the 21st century, a lot of things are available to us as veterans, but we have the skills, but we don't necessarily have the degrees or the certifications. And so I stress to our soldiers, especially our enlisted soldiers, to make yourself marketable. So I do leadership coaching, consulting, and training. And some of this, of course, was what I've always done when I was in the military as an instructor, as well as, of course, my educational degrees also assisted with that. But my main thing is you will find out in the civilian sector when it comes to leadership, the military, by hands down, they actually provide their team with much more professional development than many organizations out in the civilian sector. So what happens a lot of times with organizations, our corporate world and our state and government agencies, they place people in management positions, but they do not equip them with the leadership skills to be successful. So I assist with doing that. And you will find a lot of non-commissioned officers have a lot of little small gold nuggets, as I say, in their toolbox that they can easily use to help themselves, but also to continue to serve others. But they just need to figure out what that is. And I think a transition nugget, inputting that in there, and as Marvin said, understanding the different language, because I find that a lot of military people sometimes they use military terms when they transition out of the military, and sometimes that fear that becomes uncomfortable for other people. So we have to learn that other language too to get us in the door. Because if we can get in the door as veterans and as talented as we are, the civilian sector will absolutely welcome the talents, the skills, and the potential that we can offer their organizations and lead them into a higher level of success. And as a veteran, from veteran to veteran, my thing is to us is just keep giving it our all and continue to serve and do what we do best.
I want to do the handoff to my good friend Ryan All. Thank you, Ryan, for agreeing to come on this 5 o'clock hour.
I am happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Todd. I actually invited a few friends to join me today. I wanted to give Eric and Joe an opportunity to introduce themselves. Joe and Eric and I all served in the same unit. We all deployed twice together. We were all followed a very similar career path when we enlisted, when we got promoted to NCOs, and so we have a lot of very similar experiences. But so I guess I'll just throw it over to you. You can tell me what you did in the military and what you're doing now. So I'll start with Eric. Let's go. Hi, Eric.
Hey, can you hear me all right with my headphones in? Okay. Eric Smith. I did serve with Ryan and Joe and Jake Sidlick, who you said was trying to log in. After the military, I pursued a career in law enforcement.
You're going to keep it pretty vague.
I'm going to keep it vague because I'm a state employee. We can say that, but no affiliation to the show. I can't, you know what I mean? I can't do stuff like that.
You never know who might be on the show. You could be, you don't want to incriminate themselves.
Right. I think I have a warrant for Joe's beard, though.
So let's turn over to Joe, who I actually haven't seen in person in probably like a year, and I think he's been growing a beard the entire time. Joe, what's up, man?
Good. Hey, thanks, Ryan, for having me on. Good to see your face. Good to see Eric's face. Just a brief description of my career. I enlisted in the Army in 2002. Fortunate enough to deploy with Eric and Ryan 2 times. When I got out of the military, I got a job with the railroad. Been railroading since 2006 for 15 years now. About all I got.
Thanks,
Got any
Joe.
questions for me, Ryan? Any?
Not, oh, I got
Fear
questions. But
anything?
we're gonna get to that. Don't worry. I got lots of questions. And Jake, I see just joined.
Yeah.
Jake, can you unmute yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you did in the Army and then what you're doing now.
Did 6 years in the military. Actually, Mr. All here was my team leader for my entire deployment over in Iraq. Got out, and now I'm a lieutenant for the corrections department of Pennsylvania, and just been working there now for about 7 years.
Awesome.
Actually, you said 8 years, actually.
Thanks for coming. So I really appreciate you guys being here. I'm glad you guys can make the time. Here we go. This is a tradition. So if you guys can see this, this is from a tradition we called Mustache May, which is where we had a mustache growing competition in the platoon. And there's Joe in the middle in his PT gear. I'm there on the left, and Eric's all the way over on the right with his shades and hat on, because he always stays tactical. He's always ready to go. And then two of our other friends, two of the other NCOs, Sergeant Norris and our platoon sergeant, Sergeant Siegel is the seated one. And this is so this was Mustache May, one of the things that we did over there for fun. I do want to, so this question more for Eric and Joe, but I want to know, like, do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is that, Eric?
Yeah, that's Sergeant Cavallero.
And what did we call him? What was this?
Oh, now I'm drawing a blank.
Come on. What was his nickname?
I can't remember. The Desert Cheetah.
The Desert Cheetah. That's right. So this was so I share this because I wanted to bring up one other topic, which was military graffiti. Okay.
Oh no.
So this, obviously, I drew this in like 30 seconds, right? This is a pair of glasses, some bushy eyebrows, and a mustache. And this was something that we drew on every porta-john and every available wall from Fort Dix, Fort Polk, Kuwait, Iraq, every place that it could be drawn. There is a symbol of this. Just for comparison, exactly, it's very much like Kilroy, right?
It was your version of Kilroy.
Yes, this was an internal version of Kilroy. So I will, I do want to share one more thing with you. This is the inspiration for the Desert Cheetah.
There he is.
There he is. He's the Desert Cheetah. So you have to know, in military, right? We only do these types of things for people that we love, right? People who have had some sort of impact on us. So please don't take it in the way that we're making fun of him. He had been in the Army longer than any of us were alive, even at that point, and he stayed in for years more. But this thing, it was you that came up with this, right, Eric?
I think Bo came up with it.
Really?
Yeah, somebody from that platoon or that squad.
The Desert Cheetah. Do you guys remember the warning shot to the leg conversation? So we were in training in Fort Polk, and Sergeant Cavallero, the Desert Cheetah, we were pulling this guard that's supposed to be a simulated like civil unrest scenario. So these actors are coming towards you, and they're kind of refusing to leave. It's supposed to be like dealing with a mob or dealing with something like that. And the Desert Cheetah, said, I'm gonna shoot him. We said, no, you can't shoot him, even though this is simulated, right? Like, this is just training, but you can't just shoot a guy for walking towards your barrier. And he said, okay, I'm gonna give him a warning shot to his leg. I don't think that does it. I don't think that worked. I don't think that's how warning shots work, Cav. I don't think you can do that. There was one more thing that I wanted to ask these guys about. So this was our tour in 2009. our senior platoon leadership was living in a different area than we were. And we lived in a separate set. So it was basically E5s and below. All the E5 sergeants and below. And we called that the block. That's where we all lived. And we had a game called Who Runs the Block? And Jake, just from your perspective, I'd like to hear about how you viewed that game, how that game went. What was that game all about?
It was interesting to say the least. It was a game of one-upsmanship on who could outdo the other, whether it was hiding behind barriers and throwing water at people when they came by, or
now who was this game? What were the teams? Of this game?
It was there were 3 team leaders, including yourself, Eric, and another guy that's not on here with us, and then me and 2 other E4s. So it was 3 E4s versus 3 E5s. And I feel like we fully got the better the whole time. I mean, we might have gotten over one or twice on us, but one of you was tied to a bed. One of you had 2 buckets of water jumped on them, and another one had water thrown on them coming from around the barrier. So even though we were outranked, we were never outmatched, and we ran the show.
So you would call yourselves the victors of the competition. Who runs the ball?
No doubt.
Okay. So to give you guys some background, right? This was we only had the E5s and below in that area, and this was a friendly competition over who was in charge and who ran the block. Eric, from your point of view, how did you feel that competition went?
Yeah, I was the one with the 2 buckets of water thrown on me from the roof of the building.
So what happened?
I don't know. There's like silly string or rope or something tied on the door, and I was cutting it off to get into the building, and water got thrown on me twice.
It was a pretty ingenious, actually, red herring. So what sort of came to happen among all of us was that if you were on one of these teams, it got to the point that you couldn't go anywhere by yourself, because shenanigans would have people were laying in wait at all times to ambush you in a variety of ways. And the one day, Eric and I and Tom went to the gym, and Eric left early. Eric went back to the barracks early, and Jake's team happened to get all of this on video because they were laying in wait for him. They waited for him. They were waiting for forever. I don't know, the patience, the amount of patience it must have taken for them to put this trap and lay it in place. And because we were at the gym, we were gone. Who knows how long we could have been gone? They didn't know, but they were going to wait, and they were going to spring this trap. And so Eric shows back up by himself, and they set up this red herring, right? This it was like fishing string on the door, and Eric like sees it, and he walks away, and he comes back, and then he cuts it, and he thinks that that's like the trap, and he goes to walk into his door, and Jake and his friends poured 2 buckets of water on him from the roof. But there was another one where I was I was the victim of a very particularly vicious attack, where Jake, I was in charge of 2 soldiers, Jake and Terry, and Jake runs up to my room and he pounds on the door, and I opened it, and he said, come quick, Terry's hurt." And I jump off I run out of my room, and I look over, and I see Terry laying on the ground, holding his knee. He's kind of just like, and so Jake leads me through this little causeway, and I run through there, and one person hit me with a bucket of water, and another person threw a whole bucket of baby powder on me. And then Terry and Jake both get up, and they just laugh at me, and they ran away. Some rough stuff.
Well, and what made that better was you having your fleece jacket, which really absorbed that water.
It did. Yes, it did. I have to say, Jake, that it was being in charge of you, and I've talked about you on this show before. It was being in charge of you that made me realize that I could be a father, right? Because
that's not what I was expecting. That's
right. Because, and here's the reason, is because if you didn't hear Jake for a certain amount of time, this sixth sense was developed in my head. Like, what's he doing? Like, what is Jake up to? Like, what is going on? I haven't heard from him in like 30 minutes. What is he doing? So I want to thank you for that. You really helped develop that early for me. And it really has come a long way. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I appreciate being able to help.
Thank you so much for watching the highlights from Veterans Breakfast Club's Vet-A-Thon. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube. See you next week.